Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth on a great viewer question about the covert narcissist and why does it seem like they're always unenthusiastic, they're unsupportive, and they're coming from a place of lack. One important thing you need to understand about narcissism and really that mindset, whether it's covert or overt, is that they're coming from very much a place of ego. When we talk about the ego, the id, and the superego, this was originally coined by Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, 100 and plus years ago. And when we talk about the id, that's sort of the impulsive, childlike aspect of a person. So they're just sort of reckless, impulsive, regressive. That's the id. That's the childlike component. And then you've got the ego, which is basically the one that's the mediator between the superego. And the superego is where morality, being, doing the right thing, sort of like your wise counselor. And the ego is always in a state of discontent. The ego never feels like it has enough. The ego is always striving, wanting, wanting to improve, wanting to have a better car, a better pair of shoes, a better tool, a better meal, a better vacation, a better. It's never content. That's the role of the ego. It's sort of a constantly wanting to improve. And when that in and of itself is not a bad situation, but when it's imbalanced or when it takes over, particularly that of the mind, it is constantly feeling like it does not have enough. It's always hungry, starved for attention, starved for time, starved for affection, starved for objects as well. And so there's this real object impermanence that pervades the ego. And this is really accentuated in the covert narcissist. So in other words, we've got the id, the childlike aspect. We have the superego, which is like the wise counselor, which kind of knows and learns and is wanting to do the right thing, even if it means delaying gratification. And also, whereas the id does not like to delay gratification, it's all about now. It's all about, getting it right now, regardless of what it takes, regardless of what risk it might involve. Like a child, running through a candy store or looking at toys or a stuffed animal, it just wants. And oftentimes it will not listen to the superego, and then the ego, once again, is like that mediator in between to keep things in balance. So you're not, just completely on the superego and never enjoying things. And it's not just the impulsive, the superego can delay gratification for something greater. In other words, I know that I want to have this nice meal and I'm going to wait so I don't ruin my appetite. I know that I want to get this car, so I need to save up for a down payment. I know that I want this job, so I have to take the courses. I have to get the training. So that's like a little bit of how the superego feels. Now the ego is all about comparison. It's all about looking at what others have and sort of getting into that comparison, which can really rob you of joy. And the ego never feels like it has enough. It's always on the lookout for more. And people who are narcissistic, you've heard of someone who's very egotistical. In other words, they're not in the superego. They're not in that delay gratification sense. They're not in that, higher order consciousness or, being enlightened or being able to delay gratification. And it's not all in the id, which is the real impulsive side. But the ego, if you hear someone who's very egotistical, meaning they're very much in that middle. In other words, I'm the one who wants. I deserve more attention. I deserve more gifts. I deserve more food. It's the ego is all about, that getting, and it's never satiated. It's never satisfied. So someone who is egotistical, they feel that they are the one, the end all be all. So, and it's all about that sort of I deserve, I want, but not in the practical sense. If it's out of balance, it becomes very impractical. If the ego runs the show, it'll be constantly coming from a state and a space of lack. So the narcissist is oftentimes going to be hoarding or sort of taking what they can, whether it's time, attention, money, objects, food, etc. It never feels like it has enough. It never feels like it's good enough. It can't modulate, when it's balanced, it'll function and modulate and adapt between the two. So rather than being too immature or too serious, because the superego can be very serious and the id can be very immature, impulsive, and too goofy, too silly, and be very foolish. The ego is supposed to balance and moderate between the two and sort of mediate. Now, the ego in covert narcissism is, I need more silence. I don't need to be responsible for doing or responding or listening. They're always in that state of I need. And whether it's ignoring you, meaning I need more time for myself, I need it all to myself, I'm very self-absorbed or selfish. So you hear about people who are egotistical, they're very selfish, they're very self-centered or self-absorbed. And that state of lack, with the ego, of course, is a healthy aspect. In other words, what can I do to improve my health? What can I do to improve my finances? What can I do to improve my happiness and find peace? Because if you're foolish, you're not going to be able to find the peace. If you're too serious, you're not going to be able to find the peace. The ego, once again, is that mediator and moderator. But in covert narcissism, if they're, the ignoring, the withholding, the irresponsibility, the aloofness, it's, I need to give more time to myself. I need more attention for myself. I need to, get into that sort of hide aloofness mentality so I don't have to deal with others. I don't have to give them attention. I don't have to give them a sounding board. I don't have to listen. I want more for myself. And it's that sort of withdrawing or withholding will then, not be interactive, give people the silent treatment, etc. And oftentimes people can't see it. They don't know that there's this sort of self-centeredness when it seems like, well, how can they be self-centered if they're just withdrawing and they're withholding and they're non-communicative. It's kind of like they're not attentive to what they need to be attentive to as they balance out between the id and the superego. They're sort of going into, the impulsive. A covert narcissist, even though they might seem very serious, they can also be impulsive. Yet you're not going to see that a lot. They're not going to admit this aspect of their personality. They just don't see it. But furthermore, they feel that they don't have to communicate in this way. So if people are feeling like there's always a state of lack in the relationship, it can be because that id and that superego are out of balance, particularly of the overly serious side. We can't spend the money. We can't go on the trip. We can't, and then that's just it. There's no room for discussion. The covert narcissist also oftentimes enters into situations with a closed mind. They're not open. They're not open to discussion. They're not open to listening. They're not opening to responding. They're not open to consideration. And really, they're not open to changing. And really, if someone is closed-minded, you're going to feel a lot of resistance. You're going to feel a lot of tension. You're going to feel like they're stalling out, like a car engine that's about to quit. There's this resistiveness. there's a tension. Not attention, but tension, tension, meaning a sort of, not approving of, not giving and open to. And, oftentimes they can be perceived as very serious, overtly judgmental, overtly restrictive, overly opinionated or pious, if you will. Once again, that superego, and this is just kind of like a little primer for you, it's because there's this imbalance, once again, of the components and aspects of the personality as Freud would see it. So the lack means I must hoard, whether it's time, money, attention, communication. They need to, give it all to themselves. There is a lack of sharing oftentimes. They don't share feelings. They don't share experiences. They don't share, it all. They're not real sort of, what I would say is like extroverted. Sometimes they can be very introverted as well. So this can sort of compound that state of lack. I don't have enough time to give you attention. I don't have enough voice to give you communication. I don't have enough money to fix this. Even though you might want it and explain all the reasoning, there's a state of lack. The covert narcissist is always generally operating, I feel, from a state of lack. In other words, they are concerned. They might have sort of a worry. They might have a penchant for sort of underpaying or not getting quality of things. They don't have a good perspective on their bank balance. They don't have a good aspect of sort of your emotional bank balance as well. They don't, they're not going to fulfill what you would consider, common sense relationship contributions. In other words, not holding the conversation, not being open to communication, not considering your needs. They just don't adapt and adjust. And that withholding is generally, in my viewpoint, it is based on an insecurity. They feel that they should just not do anything, and therefore everything will be okay. They don't want to put the pedal to the metal. They don't respond with a sense of urgency, especially if something is urgent and this needs to be looked at. You'll see that they're very non-responsive or non-reactive. They're not going to act from a state of urgency until you really, once you challenge the covert narcissist, then things might get ugly. In other words, they might really start saying ultimatums or, give you a very cold, stern resistance. In other words, it'll be very chilling. So the covert narcissist will come from a state of lack. And so a lot of people then get used to adjusting to this and then being disappointed, being depressed, going without really this sort of that warmth and communication, just knowing that everything is okay. There can be sort of a very subtle tension all the time. And, it's kind of like it's lurking beneath the surface, but you can't kind of get at it. In other words, you don't quite know what the tension is. You don't know if it's something that you've done or not done. So a lot of people then will cycle that around, and it'll be experienced as self-doubt, lack of self-esteem, lack of valuation of self. And so it really, tends to take on a tinge of negativity and sort of a dark side. So for yourself, if you have felt that this has been an issue, begin to sort of pull back and begin to release and surrender your attachment to outcomes with this individual. You need to surrender, meaning give it up. Give it up what you've been pining for, wishing for, wanting, that's keeping you in that state of lack, that it'll never come to fruition, because that will breed a lot of unhappiness and suffering. And if you don't, unless you remove yourself from the situation or surrender, you are going to be in, a perpetual feeling of struggle or pain, emotional pain, physical pain. It can get all clogged up within your physical body, which is known as resistance. and just kind of feeling like you can't get through to the finish line. A very uncomfortable situation, but it doesn't mean it has to really remove all of the abundance and joy from your life unless you allow it. You will be in a state of lack to the degree that you allow that to take place. It does take, awareness. It does take observation. A lot of people don't take the time to kind of understand the cause that creates this effect in their life. They just will have a penchant for, complaining, talking negatively about, feeling things are never going to change. If you're in that state, then you are going to operate without a sense of hope. You're going to feel hopeless, learned helplessness, but not only helpless to change the situation, but hopeless. And if you feel hopeless, then everything will feel that it's not worth it. It's not worth it anymore, and then you'll just be dragging around. You need to restore a sense of hope. If it's not within the relationship, allow it to be between yourself and life at large. So do you see, it really swings the door open. If you can, get your vision off of it being sort of pivoting around this covert narcissist and all that you've missed out on, and just sort of going in that small circle. If you surrender, let it go, stop grabbing, stop clinging, stop trying to hang on to the relationship in the way that you have been. Be able to surrender. I surrender now. I give up. I surrender. And so it is. And when giving that up and then allowing hope to restore and to fill up your being, I now operate in a state of hope and transparency. Hope is a real sort of emotional fuel. If you don't have hope, you're going to feel that you have no energy, you have no positive outlook, things don't seem worthwhile anymore, food doesn't taste good, nothing seems to work. Nothing seems to get rid of that feeling. So if you come back into once you surrender, you stop sort of clenching, you stop trying to force, and you're then coming from a space of empowerment, personal power. And your power is not going to come from that sense of lack. The sense of I don't have this, I don't have that, I am not this, I am not that. You're then defining and identifying with lack. And so your identity then becomes based on lack. What I don't have, who I am not, what is not, what is not. In other words, versus identifying with the positive. I have gratitude for. Gratitude is extremely important to healing. If you are operating from a space of lack, in a space of the id, which is lack running amok, like impulsive lack, can breed a lot of anger and hostility and make people very, very sort of livid. They can get to that really anger that just does not go away. The chronic perpetual anger, being really irate, being furious, being upset, being livid. These are really heightened states of anger. And this can be very uncomfortable. It can be very difficult to live a balanced life if you're really, really angry about this. And anger, there is legitimate anger. However, it can easily displace itself with a moodiness and an irritability if you stay in that anger for too long. Sorry, I've got an itch. And so the anger needs to be released. And if you surrender, meaning I'm letting go of that lack mentality. I'm letting go of that lack identity. I'm letting go of that resistance, that sort of tension that seems to be like a barrier, like a block. I'm just letting it go and I'm surrendering. And I now come into a cool, relaxed being. You need to restore that state of content and that state of gratitude, because once you do that, you'll be able to see all that you have. It's like you'll all of a sudden be missing it. You'll be missing really the content and the things that you do have. If you are always in a state of lack and running through that fury, it's like running on empty, but a very intense empty. And what fills you up is coming to that state of awareness, that state of observation, and allowing a lot of those negative thoughts and feelings to just run away, meaning just float away like a leaf on a babbling brook. It just comes and goes. Just let it flow, let it go to its destination. Don't try to grab on, don't try to cling, surrender and just let it flow through. That is the art of mindfulness or mindfulness meditation. You don't have to be in a state of meditation to be mindful. To be mindful means to be able to observe and not grade, like this is good, this is bad, this is blue, this is, you're not assigning labels and categorization. Just release that. Let it go. And you'll find that you'll be able to feel less intense anger and less intense agitation, less intense tension and resistance once you release that and let it go. You might need to try this a couple times. You might really be holding on to that anger like it's a walking stick. I'm angry, I'm angry, I'm angry, and it's keeping you, in that space, pounding the floor. This is my ground. I'm angry, versus more like a shepherd's hook. I'm leading the way. I'm being guided by what is true, real, authentic, and beneficial for me. In other words, I'm following my higher path. I'm following my higher calling. I'm following my higher awareness, and I'm surrendering, and I just allow myself then to go with the flow, and I'm focusing on the positive, just like a shepherd would take their flock and lead them to the meadow where they can now graze because they've eaten all the grass or what have you in their current meadow. The shepherd will then lead them into the greener pasture so they can eat again and they can be healthy, and then the flock will flourish. Your life, should have, that feeling where you're allowing yourself to be guided like a shepherd, like a shepherd's hook, if you've ever studied that or know what it is, versus like an angry walking stick that you're pounding at things all the time. This can be very destructive, and it will really start to corrode you and corrupt you from within. The stress literally does create a high cortisol level, that stress, and then the adrenals are pushing out all their norepinephrine and all the adrenals that will eventually wear you out. You'll feel exhausted all the time. You'll feel that you can't put up with things anymore. You are so sick and tired. Adrenal fatigue. So you need to restore and look at the big picture and get a sense of balance, and have more gentleness for yourself. Be a little bit more gentle with yourself and gentle with life, and allow life to be able to provide for you. In other words, begin then to live with gratitude and have gratitude for all that you have. Once you do that, you'll see all that you have, and it's really going to be beneficial to keep that in your mind's eye and in your heart's eye. Having gratitude. I am so fortunate. I am so blessed. I am grateful for. And list 1 through 20 and begin to look at this list. Really get so that it really sinks in, and that feeling of gratitude is powering you and empowering you like positive emotional fuel versus the negative emotional fuel, which oftentimes people will pick up and live in that vibe if you've been associating with or married to, living with someone who is covert narcissistic. You'll feel that things don't get done, things are never happening, we are late, we are, we missed out. There's all this sort of building up of negativity. Let it go and realize that if you are basing your happiness on a covert narcissist lack mentality, then it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult for you to simultaneously be in a state of lack and feel negative and be happy. It just doesn't mix. You're going to be unhappy if you're always in a state of drudgery and lack. And oftentimes that is provoked and perpetuated by a covert narcissist because they're very much caught up in that ego that they need. They're not, withholding, withdrawing. I can't open up my purse strings and give you any time, attention, consideration, listening. They're going to be very tight with their emotional purse strings, if you will, and not, give you time, attention, because for them, it might mean them rattling their cage. It might mean them getting into action, which they are going to be resistive of. In other words, like we've discussed before, the covert narcissist, especially a spouse, is going to assume that their spouse is going to be strong, a leader, take care of everything, be hyper responsible, hyper obligate. Do you see how, the covert narcissist, if they can shrink away, all of a sudden someone else has to make it. Someone else has to do the do. Someone else has to be responsible. It's kind of like, well, if you don't learn how to cook, you're going to starve. So the covert narcissist is going to surround themselves with someone who can cook, etc. Do you see what I'm saying? This will oftentimes be experienced in a variety of cases or in a variety of aspects of life with the covert narcissist. And once you surrender, once you let go, once you realize that you need to, not put all your eggs in their basket. In other words, it's that external locus of control once again, and then that emotional energy, which can be so depleting and damaging and devastating, and it'll just keep you stuck. It'll keep you in the same place. In fact, it'll cause people oftentimes to dig themselves into a deeper hole, which is more uncomfortable and more unsatisfactory. So release and let go. Begin to look upon the positive. Begin to surrender and identify with gratitude and have gratitude for what you have rather than what you have not. It's a whole different perspective. It's a whole different shift. You might need to listen to this a couple times or really let it sink in, but you have to make that adjustment. That adjustment has to be within, and be open to changing. If you yourself are not open to changing, if you're not opening to surrender, if you're not open to releasing, if you're not open to letting go, but you're, closed off and all you want to do is perpetuate and blame, then you're going to stay in the same place. It's just you're going to keep that angry walking stick instead of the shepherd's hook. Which one would you rather be? This is your buddy, peace and harmony with you here today. And I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Lighten your load. Begin to release and let go of the tension that you have been living under and that feeling of lack mentality oftentimes that pervades a relationship with the covert narcissist. Have a beautiful day.